You cannot celebrate the history and the culture of Central Georgia without celebrating the indigenous people who lived here first. Now, we are joined by Tracy Rivas, the Director of Advocacy for the Ocmulgee National Park Initiative, to talk a little bit about how important the history is today. Thanks so much for joining us in studio today. Let's start off by talking, about the history and what it means to share the indigenous heritage culture and all that history here in Central Georgia.
Well, we've talked before that this is the ancestral homeland of the Macon-Bibb people. I am two tribes myself. I am Yuchi and Muskogee, and these are our ancestral lands. And so really everything that's happening right now in the Southeast, especially here in Macon, which is kind of a flagship effort of what's happening in this revitalization, it's just really important that we're able to come back and reclaim the stories, the land, and then there's a healing that comes with that.
Yeah, coming up we have a federal holiday, which many people still to this day call Columbus Day, but many others call it Indigenous Peoples Day.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the history there.
Yeah, so it's kind of bizarre to name this country after a man and say Columbus Day when he didn't really discover it. And so all across Indian country, which is a legal term of art, people have started saying, Columbus didn't discover us, we discovered y'all coming in, right? We discovered you lost at sea is the joke. But so, really there's just been a big movement to say, like, how do we take back this narrative? And then, several states have redesignated as Indigenous Peoples Day rather than Columbus Day. And so it's just kind of really been sticking. And so, it's good for us here in Georgia and around the state when we have 0 federally recognized tribes here in Georgia. However, this entire area, this entire state was all our ancestral land. So it's a really important thing as people are learning more about what we're doing with the park and the initiative and bringing that history back to acknowledge that day.
Yeah, speaking of that initiative, go ahead and talk a little bit more. Obviously, there is work being done to hopefully see the Ocmulgee Mounds as a national park. Talk a little bit about how that is going.
Yeah, so right now we have bipartisan and bicameral support. We know that Congress is shut down at this very second, but at any moment it could open back up. We reintroduced in the 119th Congress in March. So far we're waiting for when they resume to get back to setting hearing dates. There's a chance we could hopefully just pass out and go straight to markup, as we already passed out in the Senate. In the House we did testify last year, but we're in a good place. We have the bipartisan bicameral support. The entire Georgia delegation is signed on, so we're just kind of waiting. Congress has got to get back to order at some point. People have got to get back to working, and once that happens, we're ready to go and turn it on. And then we're hopeful it will not be a standalone piece of legislation, but we are hopeful that there's a piece of legislation that we can attach to and get it over the finish line this year.
Yeah, obviously this has been years in the making. This has been years of work. Talk about what a designation would not only mean for you, but for all the people who are working on this initiative and the entire Central Georgia.
Well, really, the biggest thing that people are going to see, one, it's an emotional victory. It's elevating it. When you elevate, there are 434 national park units that are managed by the National Park Service. However, only 63 are national parks. And people ask, well, why do we need to redesignate? It's because it draws in more attention, which means there's more stories. That's more of our area and our history that we get to share with the world. And so that's number one. Two, that leads to tourism. So we know that our visitation in previous studies have shown that we can go anywhere from 200,000 visitors that we currently have up to 1.3 million in over about 15 years. And that's a lot of additional tax revenue, just visitors, it's hotel, motel, it's greening up the area, it's protecting the land, it's telling the story. I mean, there's just a lot of opportunity that comes with it. So there's a personal victory, but there's also a community victory in what you see. And while the park boundary is within Bibb County, the way it's drawn right now, it doesn't mean that Bibb is the only one who will benefit from it. So all the other surrounding counties will actually benefit from it as well. Increased hiking, trails, hunting, fishing, outdoor recreation, all of that can lead to additional revenue up and down the entire Ocmulgee corridor.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for sitting in with us with the studio today. Stay with us on our 8 o'clock hour. We're going to continue to talk about the ways that Macon is proudly connecting with its indigenous heritage. Thanks for staying with us. Now, staying in the studio this morning to continue our conversation is Tracy Rivas, the Director of Advocacy for the Ocmulgee National Park Initiative. Now, during Macon's 200th birthday celebration, the Muskogee Creek Nation was recognized. Talk a little bit about that recognition and what that meant.
Yeah, so really in the bicentennial, Macon was founded after we left, but with the Bicentennial Commission, they really thought it was important to make sure that we acknowledge the people who were here first. And so there was some legislation that was passed through the County Commission, which is what raised the flag over City Hall, and that was an amazing opportunity. And so we were integrated through different parts of the stories through Bicentennial. We are getting close to opening one of the big lasting effects of Bicentennial, which is the Bicentennial Park. And within that park, there's also some Muskogee Creek sculpture that is in there as well. And so we wanted to make sure we brought in that art there as well. And then, just really we've been adding on different layers that aren't necessarily a part of Bicentennial, but it's Macon's awakening to acknowledging us. And so the street signs downtown Macon that are actually bilingual in Muskogean and English, done through a private donor. That was just another layer of bringing back that story.
Yeah, as people in this area become more aware of the Indigenous history, do you ever hear any misconceptions about Indigenous people?
Yeah, there's a lot of unintentional ignorance, which is why it's ignorance. And I say unintentional because I think there's some people who know something and they still keep themselves in the dark. And with that, what I'm referring to within the Indigenous community is that, we didn't willingly leave. And so we get those questions a lot. Well, why did you just leave? We didn't, it was a forced removal. There's a lot of misunderstanding of what tribes are today, that we are completely sovereign. And so we have our own lands, our own laws. We are a sophisticated tribe. The Muskogee Creek Nation is the 4th largest tribe in the United States, with over 107,000 citizens. As that we are sovereign, we are not members of tribes, and that's often a misconception. You don't just get to join. There is a list of requirements that we all have to go through. We all carry our citizenship cards at all times to make sure to verify who we are, and that we are really truly a separate government. It's not just that you can have family folklore that says that you're Indigenous, but ours really go to everyone that was recorded in all the different roles as we made it into Oklahoma. So there's a legal requirement around being a part of a tribe, but that doesn't mean you can't respect and learn about the history of a tribe.
Yeah, now there were some representatives from the Muskogee Creek Nation that kind of took a tour of a new cultural center that could be coming to Macon. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've been working with the Urban Development Authority for a couple years. Before I even moved to Macon, I had the opportunity to tour the building, the DeWitt McCrary House that was saved during Macon's Fading Five. And so we're working with UDA to, one, get the building rehabbed. It is an old building, it needs a lot of love. So we did receive a grant from Senator Ossoff, did a congressionally directed spending grant for us. So we did get some money from that so that we can go in and stabilize the building. So we had Chief Hill, Second Chief Del Beaver. We had our speaker, Randall Hicks. We had some other representatives and some cabinets. So it's a pretty sophisticated level of leadership coming to see everything. And so they're excited. We even toured some potential office space to look at doing really a satellite office here for the nation. And so looking at the cultural center, looking at our land, and then looking at the potential of doing satellite, I mean, it feels like Macon has welcomed us in, and there's been such a respect that the nation is looking at how does the nation move forward with coming back and having some offices and setting up and investing in this community.
Yeah, how does this all kind of play in or tie together with the Ocmulgee Mound?
Yeah, so I mean, we're in the bill writing that the nation will have a larger role into co-management with the park. And as that grows, we're not just looking at the cultural interpretation, we're looking at land management, species management, bringing some of our resources. We're already doing that with the Bibb County Emergency Management, partnering with them and having conversations and trainings. So with the park, we'll have a larger role. And so having offices close makes sense. It is our ancestral lands, and we would like to have a say you know, in what's happening moving forward. And it's the same as with Indigenous Peoples Day. Give us a chance to use our own voices and let us tell our own stories.
Yeah. Before we let you go, is there anything you want to say about, you know, the importance of honoring and remembering these people who walked before us and, you know, lived here before we did?
Yeah, really. I mean, it's a humbling thing. Every time citizens from Oklahoma come back here, everyone has their own different experience. It's an emotional thing to come back to these lands that we were never supposed to ever come back to. So to be able to come back, you know, whether it's joy or anger or just anxiety, you know, everyone has their own journey into healing. But this what we're doing with Indigenous Peoples Day, with the park, with the celebration that we have here, it allows more and more of our people to come back and get reconnected to these lands. And so it is important to remember that that history is not that long ago, you know, and we are still overcoming that, but that is who we are as survivors and persistent, strong-willed people that are still here today with our language and with our ceremonies. So I hope everyone is respectful and that it's not a dress-up culture. We ask for people to not dress up like us as we're going into the Halloween season. That is disrespectful. There's a cultural appropriation level that goes into that, and so honor that it is still a living people, and you don't just go and grab whatever, because there are over 500 tribes in the United States, and we're all very different, but we are all still living and we are still here.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that good information with us in the studio, and thank you so much for sticking with us.